I think with everything happening in the world right now, I think it's really important that we celebrate Pride. We still have a lot of work to do, and I think it's important to get together as a community and defend our rights.
Here in Israel, with all that's happening with the government and the reform in the justice department they want to make, I'm a minority. I want to save my rights. I want to fight for the rights of other minorities. I want equality. That's about it. Unfortunately, it's relevant in every aspect, every year around the world. We're making progress, we're going back, we're making progress, we're going back. The only thing that doesn't change is that we'll keep on fighting to get our rights.
Hi everyone, happy Pride. June is Pride Month and I'm here in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv usually is one of the largest gay capitals in the world. Tel Aviv usually is one of the largest gay capitals in the world. Tel Aviv usually is one of the largest gay capitals in the world. But this year is obviously different. Pride Tel Aviv, the Pride Parade, is usually one of the happiest, the largest in the world, one of the most sexy and exciting, and it is the largest Pride Parade in the entire Middle East.
Israeli strikes on the Gaza Strip killed at least 57 people on Tuesday, according to Palestinian health officials, as Israeli forces battled Hamas-led fighters. Gaza health officials said those casualties included 23 killed at a United Nations school in Nuseirat. The Israeli military said in a statement it attacked a group of terrorists who had operated from inside the school after taking steps to mitigate the risk to civilians. Gaza's health ministry said another 17 were dead after an airstrike in Khan Yunis on a car near a tented area housing displaced families in the humanitarian designated area of Al-Mawasi. Tahrir Matir witnessed the airstrike.
The car was moving and a young man was walking. The car was targeted, blood was splashing, and shrapnel hit our tents, and martyrs were left on the street. We screamed, "We need an ambulance." We put them on carts and rickshaws, and the ambulance came after a while.
Reuters footage showed residents carrying bodies of the dead and wounded on donkey carts and in rickshaws to hospitals. The Israeli military said the strike targeted a senior militant in the Islamic Jihad group, an ally of Hamas. In a statement, the military said, quote, "We are looking into the reports stating that several civilians were injured as a result of the strike." Israel has vowed to eradicate Hamas after its militants killed 1,200 people and took over 250 hostage in an attack on southern Israeli communities last October 7th, according to Israeli tallies. At least 38,713 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's retaliatory offensive since then, Gaza health authorities said in their latest update on Tuesday. The Israeli military said in a statement on Tuesday that half of the leadership of Hamas's military wing has been eliminated, with approximately 14,000 fighters killed or captured since the start of the Gaza campaign.
On the streets of Tel Aviv, Israel looks and feels like a nation divided. Protesters taking to the streets and directing their rage at the people who lead their country.
The economy is wrecked. Gaza is wrecked. Our situation is wrecked. Our diplomacy is wrecked. Everything is broken. We need the new government to bring back Israel to what it can be.
The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, may have been backed by the majority in the days that followed the Hamas attack. But here in central Tel Aviv, he has lost it. He has lost their confidence after 6 months of war.
It's been a disaster for a very, very long time, which became worse on October 7th. The country is devastated. The soldiers are dying. The hostages are rotting in the tunnels. Everything is horrible because this government doesn't want to take care of any of these problems, only of itself. The only issue that they see is to survive.
With banners and loudspeakers, they commandeered a central artery moving towards the participants of another protest, calling for the release of the hostages in Gaza. The two groups massed under a highway bridge, and their anger seemed to soar.
What was one large protest has just got bigger. Another group of protesters have arrived in the center of Tel Aviv. And it's also got violent as well. The police have come in, they're trying to put out fires, they're making arrests. And the crowd don't want them, they want them out.
If one issue binds them, this ad hoc coalition, it is the hostages. Netanyahu too passive in his attempts to release them.
We all share the main idea, the main issue that the government must bring the hostages home.
It was here at a gathering of family members of the remaining hostages that 20 families announced they would try to remove the prime minister from power. One man, whose father, Gadi Moses, is being held by Hamas, told us the government's strategy isn't working.
From one side, they're saying only the military pressure will release hostages. Will make Hamas want to negotiate, but we're not. The military pressure stopped, I think, almost 2 months ago, and we don't see any progress. And it's 6 months, and we don't see progress there. So they must find another ways.
An Israeli delegation will resume negotiations in Cairo, seeking a deal to release the hostages. But there's little hope here, as a group that was non-political charts a new course. John Sparks, Sky News in Tel Aviv.
Israeli airstrikes continue to rain down on Gaza. Video today showing a number of explosions near Gaza City. Families seen running from the blasts, and the Palestinian Red Crescent says more than 30 people were wounded. It comes as more anti-Netanyahu protests are sweeping the country. And that is where we find our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, joining me now from Jerusalem. Matt, give us an idea of what's going on around you. I know it's loud.
Okay, Phil. There's a pretty massive police presence outside the Prime Minister's residence. Benjamin Netanyahu, deeply unpopular among many Israelis right now. And we've seen protests like this multiple times a week for 18 months in Israel, and the tension is only rising. I'll give you a sense of how many police there are here. You see this line of police right here, hundreds of protesters behind them. You can hear the drums. Down below, there are police with water cannon, mounted police. There's been some significant fighting, fisticuffs in these protests. So this is different from the hostage protests. These are people who say that Netanyahu's government led to the October 7th disaster, and it needs to go right now. Phil.
Again, it's not the first of these protests. We've seen many of them. Matt, if you can hear me, talk to me about this. The latest on the ground in Gaza, what do we know about the Israeli airstrikes, the new ones?
Israel has been hitting Gaza. It also has been hitting an area of Gaza City in the north called Shejahiyah. And this has been a complex use of force. We understand there was armor moving in there, and military sources are telling me that Israel was seeking some sort of Hamas leader, although not Sinwar himself. Yeah, he is Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. Multiple casualties. Red Crescent saying that they've taken in dozens of casualties, people wounded. The death toll at this point, and that particular strike is unclear, but this is all happening, Phil, as Israel is talking about phasing down the intensive part of the war. And even though there are still casualties in raids like this, I think overall the daily death toll in Gaza is measurably less than it has been in recent weeks and certainly recent months, Phil.
Yeah, and Matt, and then there's this. Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant, issued a stern warning to Hezbollah to the north, a militant group that controls most of Lebanon. How serious of a threat is a full-scale Israeli invasion there?
And just moments ago, Phil, Hezbollah, which is that powerful Iranian-backed militia that almost controls Lebanon, firing 40 rockets into Israel, 20 intercepted. There's been this war of attrition between Israel and the north of its border and Hezbollah for 8 months now. And on the one hand, Israeli officials like Gallant and the Prime Minister are saying we can destroy Hezbollah and Lebanon at a moment. On the other hand, just yesterday he said we really prefer the diplomatic option. We want Amos Hochstein, who is one of President Biden's advisors, who's been doing shuttle diplomacy in the region, to come through with a deal that he's been working on for 8 months now that would move Hezbollah away from the border, bring Lebanese military, the actual Lebanese military, to the border and grant some territorial concessions between Israel and Hezbollah on the border. And that's something that everybody can live with. But that ceasefire is dependent, Phil, on Israel's ceasefire with Hamas in Gaza. And that right now is not really in sight, Phil.
Matt Gutman reporting for us from inside Jerusalem. Matt, thank you.
Let's assume somehow we get to a place, possibly at the instigation of countries like Saudi Arabia and others getting directly involved, where you get to a place where Hamas are removed, and I don't quite see how that happens without enormous further bloodshed, but let's assume they get removed. Let's assume that Netanyahu is removed from office, which I think is highly likely just from the fury of his own people about what they see as the defensive and security failings, plus his attack on the Supreme Court already causing huge polarization. Let's assume we get new leadership in both places. Could there still be peace? Could there still be a two-state solution?
No.
It can never happen.
No, because Israel have already shown it's not about Netanyahu. It is the policy of Israel not to give the Palestinians their seat. It has always been there.
But what if you find leadership that understands?
You will not.
But why are you so...
You will not.
Do you not see there's any chance of doing that here?
No, not with Israel. Obama, after he left office, he wrote in his book, the problem with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is that one side is extremely powerful and one side is extremely weak. There is absolutely nothing to oblige that strong side to give anything. All over the years, Israel showed you many times that they are not interested in peace. Leave Gaza. Forget Hamas for a second. The West Bank. What have they been doing in the West Bank? The illegal settlements did not stop a single day.
No, and it's completely wrong.
But I'm talking about like Arabs with Palestinian, with Israeli identity. I'm talking about them being even racist against their own people. 1950, Yemenis immigrants that came from Yemen, and they were in the transition camp waiting to be transferred into Israel. Their kids were taken away from them and given to white Ashkenazi Jews. Because they were not white enough. By the way, the whole thing about the Yemeni children, you can find it in New York Times. It's called like the lost children of Israel, the forgotten. But even when Ethiopian people were immigrated to Israel, Ethiopian Jews, women then report 2013. That's not like 50 years ago. They reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. They reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. They reported that they were given against their consent and without their knowledge contraceptive shots so they wouldn't reproduce because they are the wrong color. Israel is a racist, apartheid country that is projecting this shiny example of secularism and democracy for the people so people can accept whatever they do because they look at Palestinians as lesser people. This is the whole point. This is the whole point. And I would like to quote Winston Churchill. He had a quote that say, I don't believe that we have made a great wrong to the Red Indians of America or the black people of Australia because they were replaced by a higher race, a stronger race, a more world-wisely race. This is why Queen Rania is criticizing the West. This is why we here said, like, where are your values? Because this is the crux of the problem. It's not Hamas. It's not Palestine. It is people looking at us as lesser human beings.
Bassem?
Many of Israel's Ethiopian immigrants are poor and have little education. They arrived here as part of a program to fly all the remaining Jews out of Ethiopia. But some women say they were coerced into taking injections every 3 months for birth control.
At the meeting, they said, you don't need to give birth so many times. If you give birth a lot, you will suffer in life. You need a job in Israel. So we said, if that's true, we will never be able to get out of here. So we took the shot.
The Israeli government has confirmed the drug Depo-Provera was used on some Ethiopian women. The drug acts as a long-term birth control, but the method is usually a last resort for doctors because of problems treating its side effects.
We don't have any policy regarding using of these drugs. As I said, the Minister of Health does not issue guidelines, neither in Ethiopia nor in Israel, what drug to use.
Activists are calling for an investigation into the use of the contraceptive when the women were in transit camps in Ethiopia and also in Israel. There are around 120,000 Ethiopian Jews in Israel. Many of them live in these underprivileged areas and struggle to integrate. But leaders of their community say that over the last 10 years, the number of births of Ethiopian Jews has dropped by half. The number of births of Ethiopian Jews has dropped by half. The number of births of Ethiopian Jews has dropped by half. Some human rights groups say Depo-Provera could be the reason. It can take a long time to become fertile again after taking this drug.
We need to see if it was intentional, if there was a policy saying that we want or need to reduce the birth rate of Ethiopian women, and this needs to be inquired.
Ethiopian Jews arrive in Israel hoping to start a family and have a better life. But many women now feel the state has been controlling their fertility. Nicole Johnston, Al Jazeera, Jerusalem. Al Jazeera, Jerusalem.